The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Casey, Jacob, Elliott, I don't care how sad you are about your team's offseason. No matter how bad it gets, you don't have to worry about heading into week one with the possibility of Kenny Pickett possibly being your starting quarterback. So I don't want to hear no sadness today. I don't want to feel no negative vibes today. Elliott, I don't care about the Bearcats being bad this year. No matter what happens, nothing can be worse. Nothing than the possibility of Kenny Pickett possibly being your starting quarterback in week one of the 2025 NFL season. I just want to say everything you guys are going through, I could trumpet, and that's all I got to say about that. How are we today to start the show?
Has there ever been a more Browns quarterback than Kenny Pickett?
I mean, it screams.
Seems like a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, that's a Browns quarterback there. He's going to be on the long list of names for sure.
I just wish he had a little bit more personality. I actually don't. I mean, I wish he had a little bit more of an attitude, a little bit more of a, an effort type personality. He doesn't have. He's not the Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield. Doesn't have that just personality flaw. The only flaw he has is just can't throw the football. But he is a Super Bowl champion. It's all about bringing that experience over.
That's true. The Browns now have a quarterback that knelt out a Super Bowl blowout. Yep. So, I mean, kudos. Not many quarterbacks can say that in the entire league. How many Super Bowls did Tom Brady kneel out?
Not many.
Kenny Pickett at least one.
I'm excited for when the Browns-Bengals play that Kenny Pickett can, bring Joe Burrow in and just give him some advice. From one Super Bowl quarterback to an aspiring Super Bowl quarterback, just, giving him some advice. And I'm glad that my team might be able to provide that for you guys and your quarterback. But no, a lot to get into today. Jay Morrison going to jump on with us later in the show. The Bengals had an active day in free agency yesterday. I just feel like no matter how much they do, it's going to be overshadowed by the stuff that has not been done yet. We're going to talk about that coming up around the corner. I do like a lot of the moves the Bengals made yesterday, but I feel like the negativity cloud is going to overshadow a lot of that stuff, but we'll get to that coming up here in a bit. A lot of teams made some improvements yesterday. There's still some big names on the free agent trail, even though technically it's just the tampering period, but we're going to get into all of that more in depth coming up around the corner. We'll talk some Bearcat basketball, Big 12 tournament tipping off today. The Bearcats play later on this afternoon. We'll get to that. And then we'll hang out with Jay Morrison, as I mentioned a little bit ago. But Casey, good morning. How are we today? Driving the bus back in the producer chair again. This is a streak for you. How many days in a row?
I don't know. I really don't know how many days it's been.
I think you had all week last week under your belt.
Yeah. All week last week and yesterday and today.
The rare 7 days of Casey.
7 days of Casey. And we have a softball game today later, though. So you got lucky. You got lucky on the scheduling here.
Coming from me, who's had Reed fill in for me twice in the last 5 days. I mean, I guess that's rich.
I would say if anyone got lucky, it would be me. And my day is just 10 times better when I get to chill over here rather than freak out about messing up the show in KCC.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? I got other things going on. But yeah, yesterday was, I guess, eventful but also uneventful at the same time. I don't know how you guys feel about yesterday. But.
They did a lot of things that I don't know how much it netted.
There was a funny. I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but Casey got a report that Samaje Perine was. I forget what the team that you said. Maybe the Bucks.
It was the Buccaneers.
The Bucks, and he said the number, and it's like I can't believe Samaje Perine's going to get signed for that number and for that amount of years. I can't believe that. And then Casey, I think immediately after he left, Jacob was like, "Oh my God, he didn't go to the Bucks. He's coming to the Bengals."
To be fair, it was for much less than the reported Buccaneers contract, but still a very funny situation where Jason Lick, the Buccaneers GM, quote tweeted Dove Kleiman and said, "That's not true."
Oh boy,
it was extremely funny. I'm actually happy that he's back. He's one of my favorite Bengals ever.
Yeah, I love the part where he cost us a Super Bowl.
He couldn't have caught it.
Could have dove.
All he had to do was dive. Make a lunge.
The effort play. But Again, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett. Casey, I mean, last night was Monday night, so it was Monday Night Raw. Were you yeeting last night, Casey? That was the other big question I had for you.
No, I was not yeeting, Kenner.
Did John Cena do any villainous activity?
He did not show up to Madison Square Garden. He did not show up to Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
Sounds like a slacker.
That's a true villain.
I mean, it is. I mean, just a part-timer. People hate that. But there you go. All right, let's send it to Elliot. Elliot's headlines as we kick off the show here today on a Tuesday.
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines, whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
That's right. College basketball from last night. This is the best time of the year if you're a college basketball fan. So we'll start with the late game. Gonzaga, they outlast San Francisco in the semis of the WCC. Gonzaga has now played. They advanced to the finals, obviously. They have now played, after this one, in 28 consecutive West Coast Conference title games. 28 consecutive years where Gonzaga's been in the championship. Unbelievable.
I got to take. Don't kill me here.
Okay.
Maybe you should move up a conference.
I would agree. And I think they will eventually.
28 years?
Well, you never know.
What's the rush?
St. Mary's, they will meet Gonzaga in the WCC finals. They crushed Pepperdine 74-59. Idaho, they beat Portland State 80-70 in the Big Sky quarters. Youngstown State, Justin was talking about this one before the show, 56-54. They beat, who did they beat? They beat Cleveland State to advance to the finals of the Horizon League. Low scoring on that one. Charleston, they fell to NC Wilmington last night, 68-67. Unfortunately, that does not equal 150, which was about the total of that game.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame. All great things have to come to an end.
That's right. 16-0, though. Nichols, they survive in overtime against Incarnate Word, 74-70. Montana State, they advance in the Big Sky after winning by 20 against Idaho State. A lot of schools in Idaho. It's 2 more schools in Idaho than I would have thought. Robert Morris will be playing Youngstown in the Horizon Finals after beating Oakland by 3 in overtime. Troy crushed Arkansas State 94-81 in the Sun Belt. And Delaware, they upset Towson last night by 10 to advance to the championship of the CAA. They had lost 11 of their last 12 entering the conference tournament. They've now won 4 games in 4 days. So how about the Fighting Delawares?
Those games they lost before the conference tournament weren't particularly close either.
No.
They were getting skull dragged against conference opponents.
That's correct. Was Delaware the team that beat Xavier last year?
I do not know.
There was an upset last year. If Mousecap's in the chat, he'll tell me. Well, I thought that was the team that might have upset Xavier. But now we'll go to the big thing.
He says correct.
He says correct.
Look
Okay.
at you.
How about that? I remember that. NFL news. I'm just going to read off a lot of these. There's a lot of them here. NFL news, Will Freeze heading to the Vikings, $88 million on 5 years. Good for him. The Minnesota Vikings also adding cornerback Byron Murphy Jr., returning for a 3-year, $66 million deal. Richie Grant, he goes to the 49ers. Dolphins, they re-sign Elijah Campbell, $1.9 for 1 year. The Giants added another free agent to their defense Monday. They agree with Javon Holland on a 3-year, $45 million deal per Adam Schefter. 2-time Pro Bowl defensive tackle Jonathan Allen, he reaches an agreement with the Vikings as well on a 3-year, $60 million deal. Andre Sisco has agreed to a 1-year, $10 million contract with the Jets. Sam Darnold to the Seahawks, 3 years, $100 million. $100 million. How much was the guarantee on that one?
That I'm not sure, but that's a little lower than I expected.
I
Honestly.
agree.
Staying below $40 million, good for the Seahawks.
As I mentioned, Bengals bring back Samaje Perine, 2 years, $3.8 million. The Bengals also re-sign Joseph Asai, 1 year, $7 million. Asai, 5 sacks in 7 games to end last season. The Bengals are closing in on a 2-year, $5 million deal, I guess. They already closed it now. Oren Burks, linebacker Oren Burks. He started for the Eagles in the playoffs, obviously getting to the Super Bowl. And the Bengals have signed TJ Slayton. Is that right? Slayton?
One of the two. We'll figure that out by week 1.
2 year, $15.1 million there. So a couple signings for the Bengals. Obviously, Slayton led the NFL in ESPN's run-stop-win rate.
Fun little
of
fact about
2024.
that ESPN run-stop win rate that Slayton led the NFL in. He was one of PFF's worst-graded run defenders.
So interesting.
So which of those two reputable sources is wrong? We'll find out this season.
Well, I imagine ESPN's the wrong one, considering they gave the University of Cincinnati Bearcats 94%
Well, that
chance
was just your guy, Neil Payne.
to make the tournament. Free agent quarterback, obviously Zach Wilson. He reached an agreement with the Miami Dolphins, 1 year, $6 million. Good for Zach Wilson.
How many games will he start this year?
6.
Okay,
I would bet
think
6.
it's a solid number.
Giants, obviously, I mentioned the Holland deal. 49ers, they released Kyle Juszczyk, 8 years in San Francisco, comes to an end. And finally, Justin Fields. He goes to the Jets, 2 years, $40 million. Anything I missed there? Because I was going through a bunch of them. I don't know if I missed any.
I think you hit all the big ones. James Daniels also signed, the other top guard, along with Will Freeze. That seems to be the weakest market right now for the Bengals in terms of positions they still need to add. Would be that interior offensive lineman. Javon Hargrave signed with the Vikings as well. You mentioned Jonathan Allen.
Yep.
They're really adding to that defensive front. They're a scary team next year if J.J. McCarthy can be anything close to what a top 10 pick should be. So they're doing the right things in free agency. We'll see what happens, but that guard market is very, very light. It seems like Tevin Jenkins or bust now for the Bengals to fill that role with a guy that's even relatively young enough and good enough at the stuff they need.
Yeah. MLB, I guess just the Reds, I should say. I don't know why I do MLB, but I type MLB, so I say it. The Reds, they win 9-3 over the Padres. Hunter Green tossed 4 innings with 5 strikeouts, gave up a run, but another solid performance there. Jamier Candelario, he hit a home run in yesterday's win. Espinal had a couple of hits, so good for them. Moving over to the NBA, the Mavericks. How about this? The Mavericks get a win over the Spurs. The Mavericks beat the Spurs, and it was Klay Thompson leading the way with 26, Najee Marshall with 23. So good for them. And I said I have to do it if I say the Mavericks. The Lakers lose last night, 111-108 to the Nets. Luka Doncic did have a triple-double in the game. They did lose, however. So sad news there. The Celtics, they beat the Jazz 114-108. The Hawks take care of the 76ers 132-123. The Grizzlies and the Suns, I believe Kevin Durant wanted to start a fight at some point during that game, but the Grizzlies win the game 120-118. KD had a shot at the buzzer and missed it. The Pacers, they lose to the Bulls by 20. That's unfortunate. I don't know how the Bulls, by the way, Bulls are one of the more interesting franchises ever. They have Michael Jordan, and then after that, what do they have?
A whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, what have they
Derrick
done
Rose.
after that?
Derrick
Derrick
Rose.
Rose. That's right.
That's
And
about it.
Coach Dibbs killed him.
Well, allegedly.
You mentioned Najee Marshall, and I just wanted, this is a couple days late, but I saw it yesterday, and I wanted to bring it up along with our theme of just kicking the Mavericks while they're down. Najee Marshall on the 9th of March, so a couple days ago now, he had 34 points, 10 assists, and 9 rebounds.
Sure.
He joined 3 other Mavericks as the only Mavericks to ever do that. He did it on March 9th. Jason Kidd did it in 1995. Dirk Nowitzki did it in 2010. And Luka Doncic did it 42 times.
42 times? 42 times? Now let me ask you this. Does Luka still play for the team?
Sure doesn't.
Interesting. Those are your headlines.
One more headline that popped up while you were reading. Get your tickets for Monday, August 11th at Great American Ballpark, where the Reds take on the Phillies.
Okay.
And Snoop Dogg is your post-game concert.
Wow.
That'll be fun.
That would be fun. How many songs? Over under 3 songs.
Yeah,
Those post-game shows, man. Those post-game shows. I mean, they say they're coming, and they do show up, but boy,
they
are
undeniably
short.
show up.
Boy, are they short.
Snoop is not cheap. Imagine the right fielder or the left fielder we could have had for the price of a Snoop Dogg post-game concert. I do believe as a fan, I would give up the Shaquille O'Neals, the Snoop Doggs. I'd give up all the country concerts. I'd give up all the entertainment acts in the post games and the firework Fridays. I'd give up the sushi bars in the outfield. I'd give up all that stuff just for all-star caliber players that they sign in free agency. Like, I don't understand why they prioritize that stuff over players on the field. I don't believe you could top a product on the field. Snoop's great. I'm actually kind of excited about that. Shaq was a very unique win last year. They bring some cool acts here. That's great. I don't care about that. Can Snoop play left field? Can he hit 300?
Probably.
Can he hit 30-plus home runs? That's really all I care about at the end of the day. But
I believe he was here for I went to the celebrity game when Cincinnati hosted the All-Star game. I think he played in that game. I could be wrong, but I think he played in that game. So maybe he could play outfield, to answer your question, yes. Did you go to the Shaq one last year?
I did not.
I wonder how that was. I wonder how that was.
yeah, I wonder, how many people stayed after and all that. And by the way, is this one of those, like, it's included? Like, you don't have to buy a ticket to it. It's just part of the game? Like, after the game, you go down?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Enough. All right. Off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliott Rearing, Jacob Tissett. Bengals active in free agency yesterday. I know all the headlines were about what the Bengals have not done yet. Jamar Chase, no extension. Tee Higgins, no extension. Trey Hendrickson, no extension. And yes, that's easy to focus on. But the bottom line is, even if they sign all three of those guys and bring them back, they had all three of them last year. They still missed the playoffs last year. It is important to improve this roster. The Bengals attempted to do that yesterday, assuming that all three of those guys get an extension at some point and come back. How do we feel about how the Bengals, improved the roster yesterday on day one of the tampering period of free agency? We'll get to all of that when we come back. More Off the Bench next. All right, and we are back off the bench. Justin Kenner, Casey McAllister, Elliott Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Jay Morrison is going to, he covers your Bengals. He's going to join us coming up here later on in the show. We'll recap what the Bengals did in day one of the tampering period of free agency and what we can expect them to do, obviously, with the remainder of the week and deeper into free agency. What's the latest that he's hearing on when we can get an update on a domino to fall, a domino being a Trey Hendrickson extension or trade, a Tee Higgins extension or trade, a Jamar Chase extension. I don't think we have to worry about that one. I think the only thing you have to worry about that one is just how ugly is it going to get before it actually gets done. Does it even need to get ugly? We'll get to all of that with Jake coming up. But Bengals were a little more active yesterday than I thought. One big question we had on yesterday's show was, like, with all the distractions of, like, with Trey Hendrickson, you don't know if he's going to be here or not next season. Like, that's he's one that you are wondering if he's going to be here or not next year. You feel pretty good about T being here next year, but if they're not willing to pay him what he's worth, is he going to demand a trade? Is it going to get ugly there? They could force him to play on the tag again, and I have a hard time believing he's going to sit out and not take $26 million guaranteed dollars too. It's the same talking points as last year heading in to last season, of course, but bottom line is there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of distraction. The morale is at an all-time low right now. How do you navigate through free agency? How do you prepare for the draft when you have the three biggest question marks, surrounding this team as far as these names are concerned? But that didn't slow down the Bengals from addressing a lot of their needs yesterday. We knew this team needed to improve defensively, one of the worst defenses in the league last year, despite improving over the final month and some change, in a season where they just missed the playoffs with the 9-8 season. They made a lot of additions yesterday, both sides of the ball, most importantly on the defensive side of the ball. Jake, Casey, Elliott, how are we feeling about the Bengals' activity yesterday? Do you feel like they took a lot of steps forward as far as improving this team from last season to now?
I think they did a lot of things that they needed to do, and not a lot of the flashy things a lot of us wanted them to do. Obviously, we would have liked another pass rusher, whether that's to alleviate the need to keep Trey Hendrickson around or simply help him out if he does stay around. That would have been nice to add. We didn't go that route on the interior. We kept around B.J. Hill, who does a fine job rushing the quarterback, but T.J. Slayton, not at all. He's not giving you anything in the pass rush game. He's a phenomenal run defender, at least according to some outlets, and that means that, that he certainly has a role on this team and one that we need need pretty badly after the loss of DJ Reader 2 years ago. So he'll fill that role, but we still don't have pass rush as a team that, if you take away Trey Hendrickson, 17.5 sacks last year, comfortably one of the worst teams in the league at getting to the quarterback. So I think that's, a tough pill to swallow, not addressing maybe your biggest need on day one, and also not addressing the guard market unless you count Cody Ford as addressing guards, which I wouldn't be too happy about him being a starter on this offensive line. I think without Kappa and presumably without Volson in that starting group next year, we wanted the Bengals to go into the draft needing to only draft one starting guard, and at least as of right now, they're going to need to draft two. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, still a lot of time in free agency, but as I said during headlines, that guard market is drying up very, very quickly. On defense, there's not a lot of pass rush help available anymore. That all got swooped up pretty quickly into day one of free agency. So it makes keeping Trey Hendrickson around, if you can reopen that door, get him back to the table to renegotiate, it might make that a little bit more of a must than it was going into yesterday when you had a lot more options on the table.
I will say that usually, not usually, but the non-flashy moves are the moves that help teams and propel them to the playoffs, to Super Bowls. It's those moves that you probably aren't as excited about as a Tee Higgins, a Jamar Chase, a Trey Hendrickson. So the Bengals did some of those moves yesterday. I don't know how much better it makes the Bengals, but it doesn't make them worse, so it's an improvement. I think those were two solid deals they got done, not including the Samaje Perine, which I think is a nothing burger, no disrespect. But that deal meant nothing. The other two, I would say, did have value, and I think it goes to address the defense, which drastically needs to be addressed. So I think the Bengals are putting one foot forward, and hopefully, again, I don't know if you can count on Trey Hendrickson to play this year. I think it would be pretty silly of him to not play on his last year of his contract and then pay all the fines for sitting out. I think that's not the way to go, and I don't think he'd do that. So if they can't get a deal done, then that's what's going to happen. They gave him the opportunity. Go test your water out there. Go test what it's like. And Matthew Stafford found it out too. Matthew Stafford's a little bit different because I think teams might have been actually willing to pay him his number. I just don't think anybody was willing to pay Trey Hendrickson. I think that's what it comes down to. And if Trey is like, okay, maybe I was wrong and I'm going to play on this last year, then that's what we're going to get. We're going to get Trey, who's probably not going to be the happiest of people, but he's going to be here and he's going to be in uniform. As for T and Jamar, again, I think Jamar is going to get done. I don't see any other way that the franchise would survive without getting a deal done. And Tee Higgins, I'm hoping, but I have little faith. So I know people are upset that we still haven't gotten one of the big three to fall our way yet. One of the dominoes, as Justin said, but increase the rest of the roster. Don't just sit on your hands and wait until those three get done or don't get done, because then you're really behind everything. So. I thought it was fine. I wouldn't, give it an A grade, but certainly they're at least making moves, and that's all I can ask for at this moment.
So, the moves, no splash moves yesterday. I don't really know. I was expecting a major splash move. I think the biggest splash move you can make is an announcement of the extension of one of the three guys that we've already talked so much about to begin with. But, this is a team that finished 9-8. They were one of the hottest teams to close out the season, of course, winning their last five. But, and it was one of those we kept talking about. If you're the Bills, you probably don't want to run into the Bengals. If you're the Chiefs, you don't want to run into the Bengals. If you're any team in the AFC, we kept saying the Bengals are the last team you want to run into in the postseason. And we felt like if they just would have won one more game, a 10-win team. They beat the Patriots in week one. It's a 10-win team. They're in the postseason and probably good enough to get to the AFC Championship game and maybe make it interesting and get to the Super Bowl. So you don't want to fall for the trap of, oh, man, they're not that far off. But realistically, technically, even with all the deficiencies, they're not that far off. So I look at the moves that they made yesterday, and I think it's a very solid start. I know, everyone wanted to just gut the entire roster, and, they were disappointed with bringing back Joseph Osai, disappointed with bringing back B.J. Hill and some of these other guys. But I think it was important to bring back some of the pillars, or not really pillars. That's acting like as if they're really, really good, but some familiarity, because I do think that's important. I don't think you want to bring in so many new pieces to the point where this is starting over from scratch. I do think you have to obviously give Al Golden a little bit of an opportunity to see if he can get more out of these guys before completely giving up on them. You would hate to send them out elsewhere. I know you guys were talking about Joseph Osai potentially going to the Ravens and how painful that would have been to watch him become a 9-10 sack guy, and not being able to reap the rewards of his talents in Cincinnati if there was a chance to do it. So I like what the Bengals did yesterday. I wasn't looking for splash moves from them. I thought that it was going to have to be a lot of little moves to just gradually improve at multiple positions. I believe that they did that. Obviously, we have to wait to see what Trey Hendrickson does, because that's going to be a guy that if he comes back, he kind of brings it all together as far as that goes. You're expecting a lot of improvement from the secondary, obviously with Hill and some other guys taking a step forward under Al Golden's leadership as the new defensive coordinator. I'm not saying they're the most improved football team in football, but there's not a lot of teams I looked at yesterday and thought, oh man, they got significantly better. I don't know if the Bengals got significantly better, but if we're talking about a team that was still 9-8 and a team that would have been dangerous had they gotten to the playoffs with this current roster, the people you just added now, I have a hard time buying into the fact that this is not a significantly better team than what they were week 17 to close out the regular season.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what most of these signings are. They're floor raisers, and that was the issue we saw last year with this defense when a couple of the guys that we brought in to have, those high ceilings didn't hit those ceilings. There were no floor raisers on this defense. It was a very, very tough thing to watch. I mean, Geno Stone is the definition of a high ceiling, low floor guy. He was second in the AFC in picks the year before while having one of the worst coverage grades among safeties, and we thought, hey, if he can replicate that, we'll capitalize on the turnovers, and he'll be a solid signing. Obviously, that didn't happen until later in the season when he started to look a little bit better. Same thing with Sheldon Rankins, 3.5 sacks against the Bengals that, ate up most of his production the year before, comes over to Cincinnati, can barely stay on the field. These guys that we signed yesterday are guys that, as long as they're out there, obviously if one of them gets viral meningitis, we might be in a bad spot, but as long as they're out there, I think the Bengals are going to be in a better position than they were with the defense they had last year, assuming there are a few more additions. The big thing for me, Oren Burks, the linebacker we signed from Philadelphia. If that's the Akeem Davis-Gaither replacement, I'm thrilled. I think that's an awesome signing. If that's the Jermaine Pratt placement to be the no-doubt starter without a real competition in camp, I feel a little bit differently. TJ Slayton, if he's going to sit next to BJ Hill in the middle of our defense, I feel a lot differently than if he's going to be a run-stopping rotational D lineman when we draft, say, a Walter Nolan at 17 or someone high in the draft that's going to be a productive pass rusher in the middle. I think all of these signings are great as long as they meet the context we want them to meet when we're done with building the roster. If Samaje Perine is going to be our running back 2, I don't know how great I feel about that. If he's going to be our running back 3, filling that Khalil Herbert role when Zach Moss, before Zach Moss got hurt last year, I think that's a great signing. So a lot of these things are perfect depth pieces as long as they end up being depth pieces. And I think that would be my worry so far and kind of what you raised yesterday with the Bengals having to put most of their focus on T. Jamar and Trey Hendrickson. They're not able to do what they need to do to get some of those splash signings across the finish line because all the splash resources are being used on those 3 guys. So you have to do these floor-raising deals, which are necessary and the Bengals need, but I don't think you can necessarily call yourself a Super Bowl contender until you either get all 3 of those deals done or you make another, splash deal or 2.
Yeah, again, these moves are great as long as they're not the end of the moves. You have to do more, and obviously the Bengals will. So I'm not gonna sit here and complain about what they did yesterday. I think they were solid, and I think the Bengals have a direction, at least have a plan of what they're trying to do. I think they intend on Trey Hendrickson coming back and playing, given the fact that they haven't made a trade, and I don't think they will make a trade, and I don't think anybody's willing to offer a package that's going to make sense. So I think they're going to bank on him coming back, and hopefully, and this comes down to, I'm not going to compare him to the Reds, but if the players that we have right now, if Geno Stone, if Cam Taylor-Britt, if all these players play better, and I hate to put all the eggs in, we just need our players to play good basket, but it really is that simple. If the guys that we have improve next season under the new defensive coordinator and Al Golden, then I think the Bengals are going to be fine. I really do. Now, this contract stuff with the big 3, yeah, I would rather not have to deal with it ever, but yeah, it's sports. So I think that there's going to be more moves to be made. They're starting to address the defense. They're bringing back Samaje Perine, a familiar face, as Kinner said. So they're doing their job right now.
We'll get into what we can expect from them today and the rest of the week as far as some other additions that they can make. Should we expect them to add more? Is there a splash move in the works, do you think? Because they've freed up so much cap space, right? Are these going to be all the caliber moves? I know we're going to talk about what we can expect the rest of the week, but it does feel like there's something that could be I just feel like this offseason that the free agent market's not that great. The trade market's not that great right now. it's kind of a weird little holding pattern that all these teams seem to be in. I do believe there's a reason that so many players have just re-signed with their current teams. There hasn't been a ton of player movement. There's been player movement like there always is, but I don't feel like I feel like we're going to see a lot of the same teams next year that we saw last year. I don't think there's going to be a lot of drastic changes. I think the AFC is going to look pretty similar. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, where he ends up, will play a role in that. But I think, all the good teams are going to remain good. All the bad teams are going to remain bad. I don't see a major jump in the AFC right now, barring any major, huge draft for one of these organizations. So the Bengals freed up all this cap space. Where the hell's it going to go? Because I feel like it's going to be underwhelming to have all that cap space and only have these kinds of changes made. Am I wrong?
They're sitting about $20 million in cap space right now. They're never going to go below around 10. So they have about $10 million in cap to spend, and that number goes up significantly when a Tee Higgins extension gets done, because then obviously you don't have a $26.5 million fully guaranteed cap hit this year on a franchise tag. You can space that out over a 3 or 4 year deal. Same goes for Jamar Chase. It's a little bit different because he'll be on his 5th year deal this year, so that it doesn't affect it quite as much. But these extensions will alleviate a lot of those cap concerns. I think the only splash you'd be seeing is potentially a guard. The splash opportunities at pass rusher are gone. So unless it's a trade, I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think you'd see that. So I think the only splash opportunities you have would be Tevin Jenkins and Mekhi Becton would fall under that realm probably to start a guard for the Bengals next year. Those are the only options you have. I'd expect 1 or 2 mid-level signings before one of those.
The only splash move the only splash move the Bengals have in their arsenal is if they bring back the 3 guys that we're all asking. That's quite literally the only splash move. And I think the last time we had Jay on, we asked him, is there a chance that the Bengals make a move that shocks everybody? And he said that no, that's not how they've done it. It's not what they do. And you're seeing that right now. They're not making the biggest moves in the world. They're not going to shock your face when they sign some of these players. But they're they're improving the roster. They're making the roster better than it was previously. So that's all I can ask for at this moment. Obviously, I would like, again, the three big dominoes. Someone has to fall eventually, and when that happens, we will celebrate it. But as of today, the Bengals got better today than they were 2 days ago for sure.
All right, well, let's step away for a few moments. When we come back, obviously, it's going to continue throughout the week. What are the Bengals did a lot yesterday. Are they just going to sit on their hands for a few more days? Are they going to continue being active today? Jake, Casey, Elliott will weigh in on what we can expect to see more from the Bengals today and throughout the rest of the week. More Off the Bench, talking about your Cincinnati Bengals offseason when we come back. We knew what the Bengals needed to do heading into the offseason. We know what they did day 1 of the tampering period of free agency. It's day 2. A lot of teams out there already making moves already this morning. How much can we expect to see from the Cincinnati Bengals today? Jake, I know you kind of referenced it during the break, but the Texans have had a very weird couple moves that they've made and the more weird moves today. So good for the Eagles, who bolstered their offensive line up front. This just came out from me and Rappaport. The Eagles are sending standouts safety C.J. Gardner-Johnson to the Texans for first-round guard Kenyon Green. It'll be Green in the 2026 fifth round as well. So I don't know what the Texans are doing. Their offensive line is a good offensive line, or they have good pieces, but they're moving on from the good pieces instead of adding good pieces to fix some of the deficiencies. Texans are a weird team right now with some of the decisions they've made.
Yeah, they saw C.J. Stroud take a major step back his sophomore year from his stellar rookie season, and a lot of people pointed to a lackluster offensive line. He was sacked second most of any quarterback in the NFL last year. He really struggled in collapsing pockets, struggled turning the ball over, struggled with pressure in his face, and it's not something he saw his first year. And then we said, going into the offseason, okay, what do you do for C.J. Stroud to take a step, get back to that form in year 3? You improve the offensive line. What do the Texans do? Trade away the only good player on it. They traded Laramie Tunsil yesterday to the Commanders and then met that today. Kenyon Green was banged up all year last year, first-round pick guard a couple of years ago. They moved him to the Eagles. I have no idea what their plan is, but I don't think I can really talk. The Bengals are looking to trade Trey Hendrickson, the only good piece on a terrible defense that kept them out of the playoffs, so I can't make fun of the Texans for trading the only good piece on their worst piece of their team.
No, not at all. I mean, it's just I think that did the Texans sign a wide receiver too? Did they get?
Yeah, they got Christian Kirk.
No, they got somebody else, didn't they? Did they get Barrios?
Yes, they did.
They did get Barrios. Okay, that's what I thought.
And Alex Earl in addition.
That's right. That's right. No, I can't make fun of other teams while the Bengals do this. That's for sure.
Fair.
So the other thing too, we talk about obviously Trey Hendrickson. One of the teams that would make sense if he was to be moved there would be Washington. And, I know when Myles Garrett was the possibility of the Browns moving on from him, Washington was one of the aggressors there because they had a ton of cap space and they had a ton of draft capital that they were willing to give up to get him. Well, they gave up a lot of that draft capital to get Tunsil yesterday. So,
Yep.
I mean, I'm not saying they don't have any draft capital left, but I mean, you gave up 3 or 4 draft picks yesterday. I don't know if you have another big, draft haul that you're willing to give up to go get a Trey Hendrickson. So the list of teams that could potentially be aggressive to go after Hendrickson, they might be off the list, right? Like, would
Right.
Washington still be consideration there?
I wouldn't necessarily knock them clean off the list because the second-round pick they traded for Laramie Tunsil is a 2026 second-round pick, so they still have their first and second-round pick this year, which is the range in which we, kind of figured that the Bengals would be asking for Trey Hendrickson. Now, I would certainly bump them down that list. I would be shocked if a team is willing to give up as much draft capital as they'd be willing to give up here, because obviously Laramie Tunsil yesterday, but also Deebo Samuel, Marshawn Lattimore in the last calendar year. This team is really moving off picks, focusing on win now, which, I mean, would certainly lend them to a Trey Hendrickson trade, but I just think it would be, kind of foolish at this point to keep giving up that much draft capital. So I would expect them to probably be out of that sweepstakes, though. It is probably a move we sat on too long, because if they're willing to move that much for Laramie Tunsil, maybe you could have talked them into something.
Who do you think is in the market for a Trey Hendrickson if the Bengals can't keep him?
Honestly, nobody. I think the likelihood of a Trey Hendrickson trade being the Bengals getting back what they expect to get in return from him, plus him getting the $30+ million contract, I don't think that's going to happen. So I think they're at a crossroads right now. If there's any team that will get desperate enough, I would circle the Lions. They have that late first-round pick that they could be willing to move as well. We talked about them obviously a lot at the trade deadline with the injury to Aiden Hutchinson early last year. If they were going to add to the defensive line, they extended Marcus Davenport early yesterday, which probably again knocks them down that list. So all the teams we've been looking at have keep taking care of the edge rusher position elsewhere. That's why a lot of Bengals fans, as they watched the chips fall where they may yesterday, started to think maybe we can get Trey Hendrickson back to the table. Maybe we can reopen these negotiations and see if we can make something come to fruition, because it's starting to seem like it makes the most sense for both sides for Trey Hendrickson to end up back in Cincinnati. And whether the hang-up was money or years or guarantees, maybe both sides will be willing to budge a little bit as the Bengals run out of pass rush options in free agency and Trey Hendrickson runs out of suitors to get him off this $16.5 million deal.
I don't think there was even ever, I mean, I could be wrong on this, there was never even like an inkling of a report that somebody was interested, right?
Not for a first-round pick.
Correct. That's what I was
It
saying.
was the Falcons and the Commanders, but neither were willing to meet the premium pick.
So I don't think that it's realistic to expect anybody to come in at the last hour here and trade for Trey Hendrickson. I could be wrong on that, but it seems like, when the Bengals gave him that opportunity, it was to test the water for really both sides to see what he was worth. And I don't think anybody thought he was worth what he thinks he's worth. And I think that, I don't know if it's going to humble him, but maybe there's a chance that the Bengals get him back. I don't expect him to re-sign with the Bengals. I think that opportunity's gone. But I do think him being back with the Bengals, playing for us next year, I would say when I thought that possibility wasn't very high last week, I would say it's now a very, very good chance that he's at least in a Bengals uniform to start the season.
With an extension or just back in general?
No,
because
if he's going to sit out without the extension, I really think it's a gamble on his part, I guess, but I think it's a colossal mistake given how much I don't know how much money it would be for sitting out all those weeks. But I imagine it's something that Trey Hendrickson's not willing to afford.
Yeah, Trey. The thing that we keep forgetting too is because we're not willing. The Bengals front office does not deserve the benefit of the doubt, but it goes back to a lot of the talking points from last year. If you remember when Trey Hendrickson initially requested the trade, you guys were pretty hard on him too. A lot of people were this isn't. He's not in this. I don't put Trey in the same category as Jamar and T. Jamar and T were drafted by the Bengals. They missed their window to pay them early to take advantage of that. You talked earlier about, what his value and worth is, talking about Hendrickson. If you remember when the Bengals paid all that money to Hendrickson initially, when they first brought him to Cincinnati, there was a lot of people that said, well, they thought that they overspent to get Trey Hendrickson because in his career up to that point, he was coming off of his only really, really good season. Some people thought that the Bengals overpaid at that time. The Bengals were aggressive to get him to Cincinnati. Then they gave him an offer on an extension that he accepted, and then complained about it after he agreed to the contract extension. I don't put him in the same boat as the others. I do believe they're not doing right by T. I do believe they need to be more aggressive and get this Jamar Chase deal done. But I don't have a problem with Mike Brown and Duke Tobin looking at Trey Hendrickson and saying, you're not T and Jamar. We gave you an extension that you agreed to, and now you're trying to make us the bad guy. I have no problem with the Cincinnati Bengals playing hardball with him versus the other two at this point, especially after the market has basically told Trey, we're not giving up a first round for you. Your value is not as high as what you think it is, and you're trying to strong arm the Bengals and use the advantage of use the leverage of the public perception being on his side right now. When you really think about it, I don't think he is. I don't put him in the same category as the other two. I just don't.
I agree with you, and I do see.
100%.
I see both sides. I see Trey Hendrickson coming off a 17.5, leading the NFL in sacks season, and saying, "I want more money. I want more money." But if you're just going to want more money after every single year after you sign contracts, then what are we doing? And that's
you can't set that precedent. You don't want to set that precedent if you're the Bengals either. So.
No, and look, I understand that everybody calling the Bengals cheap. I get it. It's their fault 100%.
But they're so bad at being cheap.
They're so bad at being cheap. The Trey Hendrickson deal, he signed the deal. Then he threatened retirement, LOL. And then this year, we'll see what he does when nobody offers him a trade because nobody wants to pay a 30-year-old pass rusher. Nobody wants to do that, And I think that, again, I understand where he's coming from. He wants to make as much money as possible. But going back on every single deal you sign a year later is comical.
Yeah, I think, something a lot of people continue to forget about the Bengals, what we're sitting at right now, is the big three are under contract next year.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. They're all three going to play for the Bengals or return the Bengals draft capital. Those are the only two options for next year. Obviously, we can talk about holdout. There's been one double tag in the history of the NFL that's held out. That was Le'Veon Bell. We know how that went. I don't think Trey Hendrickson holds out for more than, 3 games max, doomsday scenario. So, I think, this is going to take a while. Why would Jamar Chase sign in March if he bet on himself last offseason, goes in and have a triple crown? What if Micah Parsons outdoes Myles Garrett? We talked all last offseason about him waiting for CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson to get all their stuff figured out so that he can know where the wide receiver market's at. He then had the youngest triple crown season in the history of the NFL. And you don't think he's going to wait to see where the non-quarterback market settles? Jamar Chase isn't going to sign until he's the last one available. Bengals could offer him $41 million right now. There's no way he's shaking their hand because someone could bump that up. Two sides have to come to the table on these deals, and I don't think there's any reason for Tee Higgins or Jamar Chase to sign deals right now. I think with the wide receivers we see on the market, with the other star players we see on the market in Jamar's case, I think these brackets could continue to move up. And now we talk about the Bengals costing themselves money from years ago, and that could continue to be a problem. But I don't know that they're necessarily costing themselves money from a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago, because I don't know what the incentive is for these guys to have signed deals at that point. And that's part of this as well.
So you bring up a good point. I thought about this yesterday. It sounds like I'm a big Bengals fan, defending the front office a bit. They make a lot of mistakes, no doubt about it. But, how do we know, when we say, well, the Bengals need to, get these extensions done sooner, they can't force the extensions on these guys. Like Jamar Chase, as we say the Bengals would have been, are foolish for not trying to get these deals done earlier. Who's to say they didn't try? I mean, we know they tried last offseason. But, Jamar Chase would also be a fool to have signed an early contract extension. I think some of these athletes are kind of silly to sign. I know you want that peace of mind, that security, obviously, and that plays a huge role in this. But Jamar Chase is a prime example. Imagine if the Bengals did operate that way 2 years ago and said, hey, let's get a deal done early. We want to make you, the highest paid wide receiver in football right now. That would have put him at about that 30 range at that time, and which they would have killed for that, obviously. But Jamar Chase could have been like, I'm not ready now. I want to wait, because he could see, him and his agent could see, kind of how it's formulating a little bit as far as the future projections are concerned. I just think sometimes we say, oh, man, the Bengals should have done this sooner. They should have done it sooner. Who's to say that they didn't? Even when they tried to get a deal done last season, you heard Duke Tobin say at the Combine last week or 2 weeks ago that Jamar changed his mind. So if he changed his mind, how is that on the Bengals necessarily? You can't force these guys to sign early extensions. The Bengals make a lot of mistakes, but sometimes I don't know if it's all on them if they do try to approach them early and these guys say, no, I'm good. I'm not ready to sign right now.
I think that, and as all this stuff settles down and we get closer to the season, and maybe it comes out where they did offer them deals, right?
Because you can't throw your players under the bus, right? You can't say, hey, don't get mad at me. They turned it down. You can't do that. Otherwise you risk the relationship, right? I feel like they're in a no-win situation there.
Maybe once the deal is done with Jamar, maybe Jamar comes out and says, hey, they offered me a deal that I didn't think at the time was worth my value. I thought it was maybe a good deal. Maybe he says the number. I don't know if he'll say the number, but that's the only way the Bengals can walk out of this winners. If they offered Trey, T, and Jamar all decent-sized deals, and all three of them said, nah, we're good. We'll just wait it out and see how much more money we can get. Because if that's the case, then this whole situation changes.
Yeah.
I don't think all three of them would be doing it. I don't think all three would hold out and say, let's just screw the Bengals. But I could be wrong. Maybe they did do it. So time will tell on that one.
I would be shocked if Trey Hendrickson turned down a $30 million offer.
I agree.
And either he's the best liar I've ever seen in my entire life, talking about how bad he wants to stay in Cincinnati for a competitive deal, or he hasn't turned down a $30 million offer. So I would be shocked if they gave him a competitive offer. I would assume they've given Jamar one. How much has that market moved since Duke Tobin sat up there? What is it, $5 million?
Yeah.
And what is that on a $40 million deal? That's pennies. I have to imagine they've given Jamar Chase an offer that is competitive, and even if it's not at 40, maybe it's 37 to 38, comfortably the highest paid wide receiver. Again, just guessing, but it makes no sense to me if they haven't offered Jamar Chase. So I refuse to believe they haven't offered Jamar Chase. It makes a lot more sense for me to believe that Jamar Chase is not incentivized to sign right now. And I think Tee Higgins is in a different boat where I don't know if anyone really knows where he lands, because if you look at production, it's one thing, and if you look at the games he plays and the injury history, it's a complete different story. So I think the thing with him as well, as much as it is with Trey on the open market, without T hitting the open market or ever being able to search for a trade or a different extension, you have to try to figure out what his value is, and I don't necessarily know how easy that is to do before free agency.
It almost feels like a pact has been made with these, especially these stars, these core stars, because I remember years ago when Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T had come out, like Jamar was coming out saying Joe Burrow knows what he needs to do to keep us here. And what we thought that meant was take less money. That's what I thought. That's what I think a lot of people thought. What we all thought. But then Joe Burrow comes out and he takes every dime coming to him, which, by the way, nothing wrong with that. I'm not even trying to spin it as that's a bad thing. And then Jamar Chase comes out after that and says he wants to reset the market. Tee Higgins isn't playing ball. He wants every dollar coming to him. Trey Hendrickson's not playing ball. I think they all made a pact, but I think it was the opposite pact. I think every single one of them knew that, hey, not one of us do not give a team-friendly deal. We are not giving a team-friendly deal to stay together, to bail out an organization that refuses to pay people their worth. I wonder if they've come together to say, hey, we are going to unite to actually force this franchise to start doing things the right way and to kind of modernize their approach. Now, is it working? I don't think so. Obviously, we got to wait to see kind of how this, unravels a bit. But like, I've always found it odd going back to the Joe Burrow contract stuff when Jamar Chase said he knows what he needs to do to keep us here. Maybe that's what he meant. We all know what we need to do to keep us here, and that is to unite, to not budge, to take every dollar that we have coming to us, because we have to force this organization to do what every other organization is capable of doing, and that's keeping their stars and paying their stars their worth. I mean, you know about the Eagles keeping a lot of guys, but there's not an example of a team around football where guys are shaving off major chunks of their salary to stay in a certain spot or to keep teammates around. Like, we want that feel-good story of that. We want that hallmark moment of, oh, that's cute. Jamar took less money to keep T, and Joe Burrow took less money to keep Trey, and kumbaya. No, this is a business. The players, I kind of respect what they're doing a little bit here. It almost feels like they have all come together to strong arm the Bengals, not in a bad way, but to get their attention and say, no, we're not doing you a favor. Yeah. We're doing you a favor by our talents being here. You need to do what's right and pay us. I'm impressed by the fact that no one's budged. I'm impressed that Joe Burrow's not taking less money to keep him when usually it's the opposite, right? Like, good for them for not budging. And as fans, you should root for that too, because the second you do a favor for the Bengals, you bail them out. Because then the next time the player tries to hold them out, they're just going to, they won't blink because, hey, Jamar Chase took less, T took less, Burrow took less. They won't be able to say that now, and I think that the Bengals are learning that the hard way a little bit.
We've said all offseason the Bengals need to pay everyone like the Eagles do. It's been 24 hours into free agency. The Eagles have lost Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Isaiah Rodgers, Darius Slay, James Bradbury, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson. It doesn't matter because they won a Super Bowl. Yep. You just have to get there. It doesn't matter how you get there. The narratives only follow you if you don't win. What happened with the Chiefs? They've been to 3 Super Bowls in a row. They franchise tagged the best player on their worst position, and he signed that tag without an extension almost instantly. No one's been killing the Chiefs. Why? Because they win. The reason the Bengals keep getting killed is because they do it their own way. They don't keep their stars, and then they don't win. If you don't want to extend these guys, you better have a damn good plan to replace them. And that's the issue with the past with the Bengals. Every time a great player has left Cincinnati, they have had no plan. And it has left them in the dirt trying to figure it out. And we're still talking about needing a guard when Kevin Zeitler left in the early 2010s. We just got a right tackle last year. Willie Anderson's been snubbed from the Hall of Fame 3 times. Like, this is very, very hard to do when you let great players go and you don't have a plan. If the Bengals were able to replace great players, it'd be such a different conversation around this big 3. But they're not. Why aren't we talking about the Eagles losing Milton Williams or Josh Sweat or C.J. Gardner-Johnson? Because I think we all know by the time the draft ends, they're going to have good starters at all of those positions because we have faith in their front office to have a plan to replace great players because they are a contender with good players, and that's what contenders do. The fact that we don't have the same faith in the Bengals in free agency is what makes it so hard to be a Bengals fan sometimes.
Yeah, bad franchises don't get the benefit of the doubt. Not forcing Browns on you, but like for a prime example right here, when the Eagles pay their guys top dollar, they're a very well-run organization. When the Eagles, who already have spent a ton on their roster, go and give $20 million a year to Saquon Barkley, a running back, that's a great organization with a winning culture that knows what they're doing. If the Browns, who paid Myles Garrett, they're a desperate organization. They're just throwing money at their problems. They don't know what they're doing. And I'm not defending that. I can't sit here and defend it because they have no winning to support that they know what they're doing. And I'm not comparing the Browns to the Bengals because both teams have their own deficiencies, no doubt. But that's what's happening here is the Bengals aren't being given the benefit of the doubt. It could, and by the way, I've said this, moving on from T could be a good business decision, but it won't be viewed as a good business decision because it'll be viewed as cheap because of the Bengals' history. When the Eagles move on from good players, well, it's a good business decision. They got to reallocate those dollars elsewhere. They'll just draft and replenish that. Either way, it's interesting to see that goalpost move from team to team, and some teams have to earn it, and both teams are trying to earn that right now. But let's step away. There's some other stuff popping up right now about some potential big news around the NFL working and Daniel Jones. I don't even think that's big news. But, again, it's not a lot of big-name free agents out there. But there's a new team that's being linked to Daniel Jones, according to Ian Rappaport. We'll get to that coming up around the corner. Then we'll get to finally what we said we were going to, the Cincinnati Bengals. What can we expect from them this week? What are some other moves? What are some other key position groups that they could target to improve in free agency? We'll get to all that when we come back. We're off the bench next. All right, we welcome you back. For listeners in Dayton, again, anytime we're talking about potential moves that could happen, we're doing this at between 10 and noon today. So if a move we're talking about that could potentially happen ends up happening after noon, and you're listening to this between 1 and 3, it's not that we don't check our phones or know what's happening. It's just this is just re-aired later in the day. So just that little disclaimer right there. But
and make sure to hit the like button. If you're watching right
right.
now, hit the like button. It helps the algorithm out. So give us a big old like. Hit the little thumbs up button right there on your screen.
Daniel Jones to the Colts, possibly. I mean, the Colts, I know Anthony Richardson, the quarterback they drafted a few years ago, that's been kind of an up and down roller coaster run thus far. But, man, they've been all about just whether it's Matt Ryan, whether it's Joe Flacco, whether it could be Daniel Jones. Like, they are a team that just refuses to marry a long-term quarterback at this point or to let anything breathe a bit. Daniel Jones to the Colts is now being heavily rumored. Your guys' thoughts on that potential landing spot for Daniel Jones and the Colts, again, going with a veteran quarterback, just throwing it against the wall to see what sticks.
It's done. 1 year, $14 million contract,
done. My
worth
bad.
up
Okay.
worth up to $18 million, 13 guaranteed. Seems like a pretty solid deal for Daniel Jones. I would assume it's his last opportunity to start. If he's not able to beat out AR, or if he does, I don't know. But this will be probably his last hurrah. Seems like a lot of last hurrahs around the NFL. Justin Fields landing in New York with the Jets yesterday seems like his last chance. Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch how this works out in Indianapolis. I think Shane Steichen obviously built his offense around a dual-threat quarterback in Jalen Hurts. Daniel Jones kind of does provide that. I know you don't obviously think of a runner when you think of Daniel Jones, but he had that 50-yard run where he tripped on the 5-yard line in primetime a couple of years ago. He's solid with his legs. He's not just a pocket passer, so maybe he is the answer to that Shane Steichen offense. I would still say if I'm a Colts fan, this is a tough pill to swallow. You went Flacco, Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, Gardner Minshew. Then you go young athletic quarterback, Anthony Richardson. And that doesn't really work out through his first 10 career starts. And then you answer that bell with Daniel Jones. It's just a flat circle of pain for Colts fans. It's not going to be a fun year. I'm very, very sorry.
Very, very sorry. Anthony Richardson, Jacob's the biggest Anthony Richardson fan.
I love
Anthony
AR.
Richardson fan in the world. Anthony Richardson, I believe, let's check that completion percentage.
40s?
47% in 11
He's
games.
getting up there, almost 50.
47% in 11 games last year. It quite honestly couldn't be any worse. So if you want to bring in Daniel Jones, bring him on in. They're starting to become a little bit like the Cleveland Browns in the fact that they just don't have a quarterback. So as Jacob kind of just said, I'm interested to see what will happen this year because it seems like a roster that has the pieces a little bit around. There's various pieces around the Colts, and them being unable to win consistently and always choking down the stretch is something really magical to watch.
They're one of the least relevant franchises in football.
Yeah.
In terms of just I don't care what they do.
I agree.
You know they're just going to be chilling in the AFC South. They might win it every now and then.
Yeah.
But what are they going to do? Ever since they lost Peyton Manning and, I guess, Luck, they've just kind of been a nothing burger. Colts are fun, though. That's a fun stadium. They got a fun fan base. I hope they can crawl out of it at some point. But Daniel Jones, not the answer at the helm to try to turn that franchise around, which is a real shame.
Over under 2.5 quarterbacks used by the Colts this season.
Oh, I'd very much hammer the over.
I would hammer the over as well.
Yeah.
Not like obviously injuries could always play a role, but not injury related. Just all right, we gotta.
No,
I factor injury. I factor.
No, yeah.
I mean, you're bringing in 2 injury-prone quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And also they both suck, respectfully. But I mean, they're not very good. So.
Who would you rather have as a fan watch for 17 games?
Anthony Richardson, not close.
By a mile.
It's
right?
not even remotely close. I'd rather watch Anthony Richardson. But
I don't know who'd win you more games.
But maybe Daniel Jones is able to be a competent quarterback for a couple games like Joe Flacco was. So I don't know. I mean, it's whatever one you choose. I think
of the devil.
You're not giving yourself a great chance.
Depending on where Aaron Rodgers ends up, it seems like Pittsburgh is obviously the big link yesterday. Minnesota has bubbled up as a veteran to pair with J.J. McCarthy.
Sure.
New York Giants have thrown their hat in the ring. If Rodgers doesn't go to New York with the Giants, they've been linked to Joe Flacco.
No way.
To pair him with Tommy DeVito and whatever quarterback they draft, and maybe the best quarterback room of all time.
Oh, my God.
A Shadur Sanders, Tommy DeVito, Joe Flacco quarterback room would make me so happy on a weekly basis.
Flacco's still not giving it up, huh?
Why would he?
How old is he? 40 years old?
Colts gave him like a big-time deal last year. He made the playoffs in Cleveland.
Yeah.
That's your guy.
That is, I mean, it's my guy. I like him coming back to Cleveland and helping him make the playoffs. That was a fun story. Now it's kind of just, all
right, buddy.
You're not really good.
Yeah, that's the thing is, if you're a team, like luckily for you guys, like right now, like for the longest time it was about quarterback. Even if you had Andy Dalton, still questioning the quarterback. All your deficiencies right now are not quarterback related, luckily, because this is the worst offseason to have. If you're a quarterback needy team, this is the worst offseason in regards to being able to fix that. Like, I don't think there was a free agent quarterback that was out there that is going to actually help you truly improve, like to where you can guarantee, like even if the Vikings get Aaron Rodgers, you can't guarantee that he is going to significantly improve your team. There's not a quarterback out there that you could have signed in this free agent class or through trade that could have, outside of Matthew Stafford, which that was just obviously a negotiation tactic on that side. But even in the draft, this is just not a good offseason if you're a team that's in need of a quarterback. It's just an absolute mess for all these teams. Like the Colts, they get out, Daniel Jones. Oh my gosh, the Browns go get Kenny Pickett. Like, this is just horrendous. This is awful. And even Russell Wilson, that's a big name. That's not a big talent. And whoever ends up with him, it could potentially be the Steelers if they miss out on Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. I don't know what to make of any of that stuff. But luckily for you guys, you have your quarterback. And of all the deficiencies you have, you don't have to worry about that at least. So.
I think that's something that we're going to see continue to happen in free agency. Obviously, this is a rare class of the draft. College quarterbacks usually a lot better and NFL ready than this group. I think Cam Ward and maybe even Shedeur can be okay for a little bit. But it certainly is a weak class. Next year, a lot better. But I don't think great quarterbacks are going to hit free agency in their prime ever. That's just not something you can ever expect. If you're going to get a quarterback in free agency, it's Aaron Rodgers leaving the Packers. It's Tom Brady leaving New England. It's Matthew Stafford maybe on a trade request up near 40 years old. I don't think teams would just let great quarterbacks leave. That's why it's so imperative to be bad in a year where you get a good one. I just think quarterback is a position that we're going to keep seeing in the NFL see swap teams less and less, just because what's the point in not extending a quarterback you think can win? That's just not going to be the case anymore. I mean, maybe trade requests are the only thing that can mess some long tenured quarterbacks up. But even then, we're seeing most of these guys signed to 5-7 year deals. That's the bulk of their prime in one contract. So I think quarterbacks for the most part are going to be staying put for the NFL for the foreseeable future.
How about the Seahawks? You get a quarterback that threw for 4,300 yards, 35 touchdowns. Didn't turn the ball over a whole lot. Sam Darnold now with the Seahawks. That was made official yesterday. You're Sam Darnold. You go to Seattle not to throw the ball to Tyler Lockett, not to throw the ball to DK Metcalf. Luckily, you have Jackson Smith and Jigba. Possibly they're going to give you Emeka Ibuka in the draft or something. But, Seattle should be excited that you get a quarterback like that. But I saw a lot of Seahawks fans excited about that addition, even though I don't even know if you actually improved. Is Sam Darnold better than Geno Smith? Did the Seahawks truly improved? You went out and got a quarterback that threw for 4,300 yards and 35-plus touchdowns, high completion percentage, great season with the Vikings last year. But, do you guys think the Seahawks improved at quarterback with Sam Darnold over Geno Smith at this point? What were the Seahawks doing here?
They signed quite literally copy and paste a little bit worse Geno Smith.
Yeah.
I mean, they got better in zero facets of the game. I don't understand the plan. I thought they were finally moving off Geno Smith because they didn't think they could win anything with him. And then it doesn't make a lot of sense to go dump a bunch of money into Sam Darnold. So, yeah, if they were going to move off Geno Smith and start to tear it all down, which seems to be the direction they were going with the DK Metcalf trade, the Tyler Lockett release, a lot of the other movements they were making, I would have been all for that. But to move off Geno Smith for a third-round pick and then dump $30+ million a year into Sam Darnold to be your quarterback, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
No, I think they got worse.
Yeah.
I think they got worse at that position. But I also don't think that maybe and after you trade away DK Metcalf, I don't know what the Seahawks' plan is moving forward, because this seems like they're trying to almost – I mean, I guess you wouldn't pay him that much money if you didn't believe in him, I guess, because it is a sizable contract. It's not what – I know Jacob said at the beginning, it's not probably what we all thought he was going to get after last season, what he did with Minnesota. But it's still a lot of money he's getting paid. And I just think it's a quarterback that hasn't proven it yet. He's had one good year with the Vikings. They overperformed, and then he choked down the stretch. I mean, it's just not somebody I would believe in. I don't know what their plan is moving forward, really.
Yeah, and the thing, too, is, the reason I wouldn't be excited about Sam Darnold is a team who just lets a quarterback go. A quarterback who threw for 4,300. I keep bringing it up. 4,300 yards, 35 touchdowns. High completion percentage. A team that just lets a quarterback like that go and the fan base doesn't even care. that speaks volumes about that situation.
Did have
right
the, I
there.
mean, he also. I mean, not. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna give him to blame him for using what he had, but he was throwing to Justin Jefferson. I mean, he was throwing to some of the best wide receivers in football, I would say. I know.
Some would say he's the Joe Burrow of the NFC. I mean, some would say with all the help in wide receivers.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. Jordan Addison and Jay Jettas, I thought they were serviceable last year and very, very good wide receivers. So I think he was given a good situation.
You imagine Aaron Rodgers going there. If you're Aaron Rodgers, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf.
Complete the circle.
Complete the
Complete
prophecy.
circle.
The prophecy.
Then, stop there.
Yeah.
All right, Casey. Let's go back to the Bengals. And Jay Morrison's going to join us coming up here in about 20 minutes or so. Let's go back to the Bengals. We've talked a lot about the moves that have been made already. We talked about the Bengals moves that they made yesterday. Some big moves have been made today already, I guess, if you want to count Daniel Jones to the Colts as a big move. But, again, you get a quarterback, good for the Colts. There you go. But what about the Bengals? What moves do you anticipate them making today, this week? Obviously no big splash moves as far as adding new pieces, but do you expect any additions today? What key position groups do you think that the Bengals could be targeting to make a move on today?
If I had to guess, they're still probably looking at guard. I don't know if they're going to make the big splash with Tevin Jenkins. I saw that there was a report that someone said that the Bengals were keyed in on him. That would be pretty crazy. I think there's some things that needs to happen before that actually gets done, but it is possible that with the 20-ish million that they have left, that they go ahead and make that big splash. That'd probably be the last thing they do in free agency, to be honest with you. The only other thing until extensions or anything like that. But I could see one last addition to the D-line room, the interior, like a Levi Unzurike, a guy that can play inside and outside. I think they kind of need that right now. Cam Sample being kind of, I don't know what his status is at the moment. They don't have a guy that is like that tweener position. So those are the two things I'm looking at right now. I don't think that they can get a pass rusher, like a guy that you feel comfortable starting over Trey Hendrickson if you traded him. So I think that ship has sailed, going back to that conversation. And, I think the biggest thing is, extending our guys. Tee Higgins, Chase, which probably Chase won't get done until training camp.
June.
Yeah, June. T, I think we're a little closer with T, and that should push the cap up a little bit for us. And then Trey, I don't know what's going to happen with Trey. You extend him to that $30 million per year. I mean, you're sucking up our cap space, so it's not beneficial to extend him at this point either if you're looking to still bring in free agents. So we'll see what happens there. But not very many moves left for the Bengals. I think they did everything they needed to do to, like you guys said before, raise the floor and get them to a point where, they're starting where they were last year at this moment right now. Maybe a little better. I like the addition to like Samaje. I love the Oren from the Eagles. Slayton, I think, is a guy that we really desperately needed last year. We didn't really have that true nose tackle. So I think that they've made good additions up to this point. I just need them to make one more big move to solidify a position of need, whether that's somehow getting a pass rusher through like a trade or something, or if it's, getting the guard position figured out. I think that's where the Bengals should go to next.
Yeah, those are the two things they need for sure, guard and pass rush, and both those two things are things every contender needs. So thus, the good ones got, swooped up early in free agency. There only are a few edge rushers who remain under 30, had win rates over 10%, and have played over 500 snaps in the last 3 years. That's Josh Uche, Joey Bosa, Clavon Chason, Joe Tryon-Shorenka, and Charles Omenihu. Omenihu obviously has been on the Chiefs for the last few years. We know him well. Tryon-Shorenka from the Buccaneers. Clavon Chason played with Joe Burrow Burrow on the 2019 LSU team. He was a first-round pick the year after. Obviously, we know Joey Bosa and Josh Uche is the guy we talked about adding at the trade deadline last year. Out of the remaining edge rushers, that list is the guys I'd be excited about. Outside of that, not so much. One name I have seen a lot of people link to the Bengals so far is Azeez Ojulari. I wouldn't be jumping up and down if we signed him, though that is, probably one of the bigger names that you could get. He's exciting. He looks cool. He has a cool face mask and a cool number, and that means a lot, but he's not very good when it comes to rushing the passer. So wouldn't be thrilled about that addition, but his agent is an ex-Bengal. He has some ties to the city and to the coaching staff, so that's one a lot of people have circled as well. As Casey said, not a lot of options in the guard market. If you don't go Tevin Jenkins, you're going for someone to compete with Cordell Volson, not start over Cordell Volson, which is not what I wanted to do in free agency. So holding my breath, crossing my fingers for a guard or an edge rusher to fall into our lap, but I am not too optimistic that the Bengals aren't done until they get their guys taken care of.
All right, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Jay Morrison coming up here around the corner. We're going to take a brief pause from some of the Bengals talk a little bit. I know that the Bearcats going to be playing coming up here in just a little bit. Elliot has a couple things on that, and then we'll turn our attention back towards the Bengals when Jay Morrison hops on here around the corner. More off the bench when we return. Elliot was disgusted, and it wasn't Bengals offseason related. It wasn't Bearcat related, surprisingly, this deep into March. But he was disgusted by the release of the new Eras hats. I've always thought, at some point, you're going to run out of ideas or creative hat ideas, creative apparel ideas. At some point, are we really changing anything? And the only changes you can make that are possible are bad ones. I don't know how you continue to put out cool apparel content like this, but these are the new Eras hats that Elliot was just absolutely disgusted by. Take a look.
There's something else, man.
I saw this yesterday, and Casey's like, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a joke. So, and I kept trying to find examples of it being a joke, but I think it's the real thing. Now, keep it up there for a second. If you're listening on the radio, it's the regular hats that you know
and
love. But it has the words as the background. So all the teams are the cities. So right, Texas is the Texas Rangers. Hat says Texas. Cincinnati Reds. Cincinnati's in the back. But then it has the logo in front of the letters.
That's right. A little foreground action.
So I'll give you an example here. The Texas Rangers, the hat is TE, a giant T logo, AS. It says Tetis. The Angels, it's ANAELS.
Say it.
No, I'm not going to say it. Playing with fire.
What's the Miami one?
That's just MMMI. That's just a lot of M's. That's MMMI.
Days.
And I'm trying. Yeah, there's that one. There's the Pittsburgh. I was looking at this yesterday. I'm like, this can't be real. So if you're listening on the radio, go look up the New Era baseball hats.
They're as bad as they come.
It's the worst display of anything. What's the marketing pitch?
Yeah.
What if we have all these cool hats, right? And then we ruin them.
Yeah.
Is that the pitch? I mean, this is an abomination. Chicago, is that CHCGO? Like, what are we doing here? I'm trying to figure out what the marketing angle here was. Athletics, ATATIC. You're just misspelling words.
Deloitte.
You're just misspelling words. The Colorado Rockies is the biggest joke. It says Colorado Rockies on the hat, and then has just the logo covering up half the letters. I don't get it. I don't get it. So
yeah,
the
Brewers, it's BR Met RS.
yeah,
that sure is.
Look at the Tampa Bay Rays. They covered up all of the Rays with the TB. So
right.
Why just not pick one? I'm trying to understand the logic here, but it just doesn't make any sense.
No,
it's terrible.
New Nork. The Mets is NEW. NORK, New Nork, with the Y in front of on top of the N. I'm looking at the Cardinals. It's car sales. It's car sales. Carl Sals, if you will. I mean, I don't know. The Padres is Pazdez.
Yeah.
This goes on and on and on. But yeah, the Rockies one is really bad. Arizona. They're all,
the Mariners are
Ariana.
Yeah, Ariana's good.
The Mariners, the Macers, because
the Bears,
it's just the S logo.
So the Cubs, I'm sorry, accidentally did it correctly.
It accidentally spelled Chicago.
Correct.
Accidentally spelled Chicago.
I count that no because the I is kind of cut off there, so it's CHCAGO.
Oh, I can see the I. You can see the I pretty good.
I guess.
I think that's the only hat that did the job.
I mean, it's just terrible.
They do a bad job every year. They come out with a pack of hats that's absolutely terrible every single year.
Yeah,
the Astros is ASHOS. I mean, the Astros might be my favorite. The Braves is Bras. So yeah,
Double A.
These are bad.
Yeah.
Will you wear these? Will you wear? I mean, the Reds. How does the Reds look? I mean, Sin and Addy.
I'll wear it if someone buys it for me.
Yeah, if somebody buys me a hat, I'm gonna wear the hat.
No question about that. Yeah, but I mean, you got a normal New Era hat's what, like $45,
something like
for
that,
like a fitted hat.
Yeah,
these gotta be like 20.
They have to cheapen them.
You can't sell these full price.
They have to cheapen them. I hope people buy them. I think they look really stupid, but to each their own.
The Guardians looks like guac. It's GUACANS, so it's the Guacans. the Cleveland Guacans. Boston is BOBON. Bobons. So, yeah. So.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't get the Reds one. It's not as fun, but I might get like the Miami one.
I'm gonna get the Texas one.
Texas one's good
because I just like Tetis.
Angels one's great.
I like guac, so I'll get the Guacans. I'll go with the Guacans hat, but
absolutely terrible. We do have a couple super chats real quick that I have to read out here today.
Yep.
Haro, member for 17 months. Thank you, Haro. Elliot, please correct. I don't know what that was in regards to. It might have been the Justin Jefferson thing. Again, I was pointing out that Justin Jefferson was a really good wide receiver and that I called him mediocre to illustrate my point that he wasn't that. It was sarcasm. It was a poor display on my part of wordplay. So I apologize to the universe for saying that. I was very much saying that Sam Darnold had a lot to throw to by having Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. So that's what I was saying there.
Good job correcting.
Thank you.
Big of you.
Colin Will, member for 8 months. Thank you, Colin. Needs some guard help and pass rush.
Yeah.
And that is 100% accurate. But yes, certainly.
We also
have a
have
few
an update
minutes.
from Alex Wallace saying that the Rangers hat has been pulled from shelves.
It has.
Sold out?
Well, it's
Or
the
pulled?
direct Spanish translation.
Wait. The Rangers hat's been pulled?
That Rangers hat is no longer for sale.
Why not?
Well, I took many years of Spanish, and I don't know what. So what? Let me go to Google Translate. real
That's what they
quick, right?
said. That's what they said.
No, I have
right.
to do it too.
Yeah.
That's what they said. So that hat apparently cannot be bought anymore.
Wait. What does it mean? Somebody help me. Hold
Oh
on.
my God! Yeah, it's TITS is what it means. I figure if I spell it, it's less offensive.
Are you not
That's
figuring
what
that
it
out,
means.
Elliot?
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's even better.
So obviously they pulled
thought-
it from the shelves.
I'll buy it.
If I had to guess, if it was TATAS, I would have understood.
Yeah.
But Titas means something else in
Yeah.
Spanish. So
Okay.
nice going, Rangers. I kind of want the hat even more now, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not gonna-
No question.
Yeah, I want that. I said I wanted that hat. I want it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to find it.
I thought you were saying you wanted that hat for a reason.
No, I thought it looked stupid, so I wanted it. But now there's a reason to get it.
Well, don't look up anales in Spanish either.
Is that a bad one too?
That one
Really
too?
bad. That one's bad.
Oh,
What are we
no.
doing, Casey?
I'm sorry.
I think we all know.
Oh no. Oh no.
Oh, it's exactly what you think it is. Yep.
None of these are hard to figure out. Like,
A lot of Spanish words are just English words spelled incorrectly. That just the context clues are there a little bit.
That's right.
So whatever. All right, Jay Morrison coming up. Hopefully, if he didn't catch that segment, he'll still feel like he's capable of coming on with us. I know we have a few minutes before he does come on. Your Bearcats could be playing coming up here around the corner. Is this
Oh, boy.
is this the last game of the 2024-25 season? Is this the last of the Bearcats that we'll see until October, November?
No, they'll play one more after because they're gonna win.
That's the spirit.
They're gonna win, and I'll tell
how
you.
much did they beat Oklahoma State by last time?
Well, they lost by 11, and that was the last game of the season.
Well,
Oklahoma
I mean,
State
at
stinks.
Oklahoma State, right?
Yeah, it's a tough place to play. I think it was
Bedlam.
Abu Uzmain. For those of you who are a fan of the Xavier Musketeers, Abu Uzmain absolutely torched the Bearcats on Saturday. So if he does it again, it's over. I mean, it's over. But 6.5 points spread in favor of the Bearcats tonight, or this afternoon. Tip off at 12:30. I would be hammering the Oklahoma State Cowboys on the spread. Now, I do think the Bearcats win because I think my teams do this thing where they're eliminated and they're dead, and it's like, all right, just go away. Then they won't go away. They'll go on some run. They'll go on some little mini run here, and it's not going to matter, and it's just going to be even more disappointing. Whatever the most disappointing outcome is, that's what the Bearcats will do. I mean, it was just a joke. If you watched the game Saturday, you know how bad it was. Jizzle was fine, I guess. Dan Skilling's probably played his best game of the year. Took him the entire season. Had 15 points. So yeah, we'll talk more about it in a bit. But man, the Bearcats couldn't have had a more disappointing season.
I saw Dan Skilling's TikTok over the weekend.
I bet you did. That's what he's busy doing most of the time.
I hadn't seen one yet. I would have liked to know that during the season.
Yeah.
All right, it's Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wingham and Dayton. Bearcats, a lot of positive vibes around them. Let's go to the other team in Ohio, in Cincinnati, I should say, that has a lot of positive vibes. Let's go back to the Bengals. Bengals offseason, tampering period of free agency, off and rolling. What the heck's going on with Jamar, T, and Trey? Once they do get all this stuff figured out, I have no clue what the hell we'll ever talk about with Jay Morrison when he comes on, to be quite honest with you. But hey, the content writes itself. We'll be right back. Jay Morrison hangs out with us next. All right, and we welcome you back. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, and of course Dayton's ESPN Radio 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. We've spent a lot of time on the Bengals the last couple of days, and rightfully so. The Bengals, a lot of news over the weekend that technically wasn't Bengals related, but it did impact the Bengals, of course, with these contracts that keep coming out. It keeps making things more and more difficult for the negotiations happening between a handful of players and the Cincinnati Bengals front office. We'll talk about that, as well as the Bengals' activity in free agency and what we can expect from them the rest of the way this upcoming week. But hanging out with us now covers your Cincinnati Bengals, Jay Morrison, giving us some time today. Jay, happy Tuesday. How are we today?
Doing great. You know, I heard you guys talking before I came on. I literally just texted another Bengals beat writer and asked him, make this line make sense. It's up to 7.5 now with UC and Oklahoma State. I don't get it at all. It was just 3 days ago that they did not look good. So, but usually when you think a line looks fishy, there's a reason for it. So I don't know that I would touch it.
Speaking of something that looks fishy, I was scrolling through Twitter, and I saw your face. I saw your picture. I saw a few faces of a lot of the great beat writers that covered the Cincinnati Bengals, of course. Why don't, Casey, go ahead and pop that up. Jay, explain your Who Day Nights. And that's my friend Charlie Goldsmith right there. There's Paul Day. I mean, and there's Jay. Jay, right there. Well, what is happening here? The Growler podcast, Who Day Nights. What is happening in this picture right here?
So I don't know what the original photo is. So Paul does with Mark, the guy on the left. He does Who Day Light on Friday. And now this week for free agency, we're doing a live podcast every night at 9:00. And we had one up. It was from Baywatch nights. And they had put our faces on them. And now that we asked people, listeners, viewers to create their own. And so that was the first one we received. And I got put in a dress, which is fine. That's the first time ever, I will mention. But now, the more submissions are coming in. We got one that's Seinfeld related that they turned me into Kramer. Charlie, unfortunately, is a female. Again, he's Elaine. So you will see that on tonight's live show at 9.
Does Charlie have the dance moves like Elaine? That's the big question.
I hope not for him.
No, Jay, I know we didn't bring you on to talk about, of course, that. We appreciate you giving us some time today. Busy time, obviously. I joked earlier. I'm like, man, when the Bengals do figure out these contract extensions with T and Jamar and Trey, I don't know what the hell we'll be talking about when they get all that stuff done. I feel like it's the same thing every time you come on. We'll definitely talk free agency in a moment. But obviously, one thing we discussed on yesterday's show was like, how does this organization, how does this team, with all the distractions and all the talking points about the Trey Hendrickson negotiation, Tee Higgins negotiation, Jamar Chase, with all of that going on, that plays such a heavy role of the makeup of this team and not knowing how some of these contracts are going to play out. How much of a distraction is that? How much of a roadblock is that when this team is preparing to fill out a roster and they have a ton of cap space and they've added quite a few players yesterday? How much of a distraction, how difficult is it for them to navigate through free agency and prepare for the upcoming draft when there's so much uncertainty about what the finality is going to be with the handling of these negotiations with Jamar T and Trey Hendrickson?
Yeah, I don't think it's that much of a distraction. It's not as though, Trey maybe is a little bit more of a wild card on how that can play out, but you pretty much have a framework in place with Jamar. You know what that's going to look like, basically. And then same with T. It's far enough apart where you're not quibbling over pennies, but it's still, they have a pretty good idea of where that's going to land. So it's just a matter of kind of going back and forth and seeing who's willing to concede this, there, and that. So I don't think it necessarily impedes what they need to do in free agency. The Trey Hendrickson thing is interesting. They granted him the request to go seek a trade. A lot of times when that happens with a player of his caliber, it happens pretty quickly. Like we saw Joe Tooney when the Chiefs gave him the opportunity to do that, and bam, I think it was within hours he landed a deal with the Bears. And we haven't seen that from Trey. So that leads me to believe that either the compensation isn't where the Bengals want it to be, or the extension after the trade isn't where Trey wants it to be. Trey's maybe seeing that his market isn't quite what he thought it was. So I really think that opens the door for his return. And, probably I don't think they're going to give him a 3-year deal, anything like that. I could see them just saying, hey, okay, we'll double what your base salary. He's set to make 16 this year. We'll double that to 32, and then we'll let you hit free agency next year. And then that way he's not sour. He knows he can still make another run at a big contract next year. But they do this all the time. Duke talked about at the combine about parallel paths, and especially with Jamar and T having the same agent, you're kind of working those things together. That not just this organization, any NFL team is very, very adept at multitasking.
When it does come to these contracts, like we know Jamar's going to get his. We feel pretty confident about T at this point, but like, and it sounds like such a generic question. Like, what is taking so long? Like, you know that you're going to keep them. What are they asking for that is just so dang difficult? I mean, a lot of people will just throw out, okay, it's the cash, issues for this team. Well, it's February or it's March right now. I'm sorry. And they say, well, it gets done in July. Did more cash just come into the hands of the Brown family all of a sudden to get a deal done in July versus now? Like, I know it sounds very generic-y, but like, why is this taking so long to get done? I'm not comparing the Bengals to the Browns by any means, but Myles Garrett, Andrew Berry sit down for 36 hours and boom, they hash out the biggest contract, non-quarterback contract in football. Why is this taking so long? Why is this being made to seem more difficult than it needs to be? Jamar Chase especially, but even for Tee Higgins, if the plan truly is to find a way to keep him.
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals are historically hard to negotiate with, and they set a value on a guy and they stick to it. And in this case with T, they've got the ultimate leverage with the franchise tag. They know he's not going to sit out the year. They know he's eventually going to sign it. And so I'm sure that's what the haggling is right now, is over guaranteed money on an extension and not so much the average annual value. And kind of the same with Jamar. I think Jamar, it's more get T done and see where that lands. And then, Jamar is under contract this year, and I fully expect the extension to happen at some point this season, but there's really no rush. It would help. I mean, if you got him done, you lower the cap hit this year that he's going to make on that 5th-year option and kind of spread out some of that stuff later in the deal. So you would actually give yourself more money to spend in free agency. But I think they already know what that's going to look like. Whatever the final dollar amount is, they already have an idea of how much more money they're going to get. So I think they're spending with that in mind right now. It's like anything else. No matter how far apart the sides are or how close they are, the Bengals they set a mark and they don't like to come off of it. And that's not really how the league operates anymore. I mean, you look at some of these deals that have been done in free agency, the Bengals need help at guard and they haven't got one yet. And some of these prices, in my mind, have been crazy. The Aaron Banks deal, 4 for $77. I had him as maybe the 7th or 8th best guard in the free agency class this year. And he gets that huge deal. At some point, if you have a need, you have to go above your comfort zone and get that need filled. It's just like the draft. Last year, they had to get a run stopper. They didn't get one in free agency, and they painted themselves into that difficult position of having to reach for McKinley Jackson in the 3rd round when they probably should have taken that guy in the 4th round. It's just sometimes it works out for them and they do the financially right things, and then other times it kind of bites them because they sit where they think they should sit, and that other people swoop in, offer more, and guys they want go elsewhere.
You talked about yesterday with one of the Bengals signings. Tyler Shelvin was the Bengals' 4th-round pick in 2021. The Bengals went out and got T.J. Slayton, who was picked just 53 picks later. You pointed out Shelvin played 5 career games. Slayton, 64. Another pending free agent right now that Casey McAllister, our producer here in the room, and I have talked about is potentially solving another wrong. Tevin Jenkins was taken just a few picks before Jackson Carman in the 2nd round of that draft. You said the Bengals need to attack a guard. Do you think there's any chance they swing as big as a Tevin Jenkins, even with some of those deals being much higher than expected?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see where Tevin comes in, but I definitely think he would be a guy that would be in play. They obviously were looking for offensive linemen in that draft, and they could have taken Tevin Jenkins, even though he went before Carman. Yeah. They traded down with New England, and at that point, when they traded down, Jenkins was still on the board, and then he goes 1 pick after they trade down. I think it was 5 spots. I think they went from 41 to 46. I could be wrong on that, but they only went down a few spots. So Jenkins was there if they wanted him, and it didn't work out. But I think he would be in a 10 to 12 million average annual value contract, and that's just a little above Alex Kappa was set to make 10.3 this year. They signed him. What was it? It was a 4-year, $35 million deal. So you look at inflation, you look at the way the cap's gone up. I think that's right in line. For the longest time, they didn't really value the guard position. You did see that change with the Kappa signing, and so I do think a guy like Jenkins could be in play. And then we talked about this on the podcast last night. Kind of the theme of all these signings they've had so far has been the familiarity aspect, where they're bringing back Tanner Hudson and Mike Gesicki and Cody Ford and B.J. Hill, and then they go get Samaje Perine, who they had for years, and then even Slayton. He's never played for the Bengals, but he played for the Bengals defensive line coach for 3 years in Green Bay. So if familiarity is a theme, Kevin Zeitler's still sitting out there too. He was the first-round pick in 2012. They let him walk after 4 years because, as I said, they don't really value the guard position. And he's had a heck of a career. He's still one of the top-rated guards by PFF, and I think you could bring him in on a 1-year deal and kind of let him chase a ring at the end of his career. I know it was 2-3 years ago the Bengals made a little bit of a run at him in free agency, and Kevin Zeitler's camp was not impressed at all with their offer. They actually viewed it as insulting. So maybe that burned that bridge. I don't know, but things change. It's been a few years. Maybe that's been salved. But I think Jenkins and Zeitler would be two really good options to bring in. Even if it's Zeitler for 1 year, you draft a guy, you bring him in, you still have Cody Ford as a backup, and you kind of put yourself in this position next year to go get a guard again. But I think you feel really comfortable with a Kevin Zeitler for 1 year.
Signing Zeitler to a 1-year deal, drafting a guard would remind me a lot of the situation the Bengals went into week 1 with last year. 1-year deal with Trent Brown, drafted Amarius Mims early, kind of allowed him to ease along. So far for the Bengals in free agency, they kept Osai and B.J. Hill, as you said, added T.J. Slayton and Oren Burks, living in that mid-level free agency signing range that we usually see them live in. Which of these guys defensively do you think will have the biggest immediate impact on this team in 2025?
That's a good question. It's either Slayton or Osai. I would probably say Slayton, just because we kind of saw it last year with Osai. Came on at the end of the year. A lot depends. If he's got Trey Hendrickson on the other side, he could really have a big year. If he's the dude and Miles Murphy doesn't develop, then I don't know that you're going to see that from Joseph Osai, that jump that they're hoping for, and really a really affordable kind of 1 year, $7 million. That's a great prove it deal for the Bengals, and it's a good payday for Joseph Osai. He made less than $5 million in his first 4 years in the league. He gets $7 million this year, but I think Slayton is the guy. This team has been so bad against the run for so long, and even when they went, it felt like they kind of overpaid for DJ Reader, but he was incredible when he did play, but he missed a lot of time. He had 2 serious injuries that he only played 5 games that first year in Cincinnati, and there was so much more to him than his play. That what he meant, he was kind of the heart and soul of that defense, of that locker room, and I think they would do that move again if you could go back in time. But Slayton, I don't want to compare him. He's not as good as DJ Reader, but he's that same type of player, 330-pound run stopper in the middle of the defense. And that's kind of what this has been. Bringing back B.J. Hill, who was PFF's number 10 run stopper last year among defensive tackles. You put B.J. Hill in there with Slayton. I think Jenkins and Jackson both had promising rookie years, so you would like to see them kind of develop and continue that ascension. But you don't have a pass rusher in there at that defensive tackle position. And that's what so much of this talk was about going into this offseason, was improving the pass rush. And so I think that's what the defensive tackle in the draft is going to look like. Go get a good 3 tech. There's a bunch of them in this draft. But I think, to answer your question, Slayton is going to have a bigger impact than Osai will.
Well, you're a pros.
And Oren Burks is – I don't even know about Oren Burks. He's never been a starter in this league. He's only 1 year he played more than 14% of the defensive snaps. Again, it's a guy that I think is a depth piece. He is really good on special teams. He is a solid tackler. He's only missed 3 tackles the last 3 years, so he hasn't gotten a lot of opportunities because he hasn't played. But when plays have come his way, he's made them. And I think more important, the Eagles lost Nakobe Dean during that Super Bowl run, and Burks stepped in and was a key player on defense, and he played really well on that big stage. And I think that really attracted the Bengals to him. But I could see them kind of going back to that old template of the third round linebacker, like they did with Logan Wilson, like they did so many times before Logan Wilson and it failed. That's another position where you sign a guy lower end in free agency and then you double down with the one in the draft.
It seems like his finances matched up more filling that ADG role as opposed to maybe the Jermaine Pratt linebacker too. But you had a perfect segue into my next and last question. The Bengals haven't really addressed the pass rush whatsoever in free agency, and we know that was one of the biggest needs going into this offseason. With Trey Hendrickson obviously given permission to seek a trade, does the lack of options still available to address that pass rush bring the Bengals back to the table with Hendrickson, whether to try to bring his number down if he's not finding the market that he wants, or if they're willing to budge on their number because there's not a lot of options out there to get to the quarterback?
Yeah, I do. I think it all plays in. Number one, the no real offers for Trey so far, and the fact that all these edge rushers have flown off the board, and some of them, yeah, crazy money for Myles Garrett, but some of these other guys, I think Chase Young, Malcolm Kuntz, a lot of these guys went for less than a lot of us expected. So I do think it recalibrates what could happen with Trey Hendrickson. And again, you've got a lot of good edge rushers in the draft. And I think you feel pretty good about Trey Hendrickson and ascending Joseph Osai. I know people like to hammer on Myles Murphy, but he showed some flashes of winning more toward the end of the year. He's only going into year 3, a guy that hasn't played a lot. The increased playing time could pay dividends for him too. So you feel different about it, obviously, if you bring back Trey Hendrickson, but you still have a draft class where it's not just the D tackles. There's a lot of good D ends too. And maybe that's first and second round, a D end and a D tackle, and then you're off and running.
All right, Jay Morrison, awesome enough to give us some time. Last thing, on the way out, you look at the AFC North. Obviously, Cleveland's not a threat to Cincinnati at this point. Baltimore still the favorite out of the AFC North at this point, barring any drastic additions for the Bengals at this point to help elevate them. You look at Pittsburgh right now, obviously adding DK Metcalf, Aaron Rodgers rumors, kind of floating around out there. How the AFC North kind of stacking up, in your opinion, with a lot of the teams with deficiencies there and having to address some of those? How's the AFC North kind of stacking up in the early stages of free agency and the draft coming up around the corner, and how that impacts Cincinnati, of course?
Yeah, I think Baltimore's still the team to beat. I'm not ready to write off the Browns. They've got an issue at quarterback, obviously with the Deshaun Watson situation, but that's still a good enough roster where if they get some pieces in the draft, they can be a really good team. Steelers, I don't know. What are they going to do at quarterback if it's not Aaron Rodgers? And even if it is that the answer? I mean, he's getting older. He didn't look that great last year when he was healthy. The year before, obviously the Achilles. So that's a big issue. It's been their issue for years, and they haven't, since Ben left, and they haven't been able to solve it. So I think the Bengals are in a good spot. I would put them right now as probably, you got Burrow, Chase, Higgins. You're right there, and they've got some holes to fill, obviously, but I think they're right there with Baltimore. Pittsburgh, Cleveland still have some work to do.
All right, good stuff. Jay Morrison, BengalsTalk.com, covers your Bengals. Awesome enough to give us some time today. Jay, we appreciate your time as always, and we'll talk soon.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, good stuff. That wraps it up for us on the radio side. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us today. We'll do it again tomorrow. And until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. All right, radio's done. Now we're just dudes being dudes, hanging out.
I saw this yesterday. I sent this to you guys. UC with 0. This is per our good friend Hudson at Hudson Keen. Did he change his name again on Twitter? I think he changed his name. I think it was Barry Keene. Now it's Hudson Keene. I think
fifth time.
He's Houdini. You got to help me out.
Well,
here.
he's Houdini.
It's correct. I need Houdini to help me out with this. At Hudson Keene now on X.com. UC with a whopping 0 players selected for the All Big 12 first, second, third, defensive, freshman, and newcomer teams. 35 selections in total. 35 selections. They didn't have anybody.
How is that possible?
Jizzle James was the lone Bearcat to get honorable mention.
Shanabayev, though.
Shanabayev.
He's coming.
Yeah.
Wes Miller's coming back, though. That's all
I
that
asked
matters.
you. I asked you.
One more
is
year.
that a
One more
Wes
year.
Miller tweet, or is that a John Cunningham tweet, or is that the players stink tweet?
Yeah,
Who is the main culprit?
When
here?
I responded, that's just like we're all in hell.
Right.
Tweet.
Yeah.
That's what that.
No,
that's what
that's
that
fair.
tweet was.
That's fair.
So I'm pretty disappointed. Looking back, obviously, at what happened this year. I'm going to watch. I guess today I'll pay attention to what happens in that game. But it's a roster that had talent on paper. It's a roster that should have been better, and it wasn't. The fact that we sit here in March and we have to bench guys because they're not giving effort, it's a pretty bad display. So good luck to them. Good luck to them. 7-point favorites against the team they just lost by 11 against. I don't think they're going to cover that, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm a bad gambler, so maybe it comes.
They
to
lose by
fruition.
11 at Oklahoma State. Was that an away
Correct.
game?
Correct. It was.
So, man, you mean to tell me that they have an 11-point home court advantage at Oklahoma State?
Well, they got the 11-point play.
So I don't get it. And then, not to mention, if those of you who haven't seen the Big 12 court that we're playing on,
Don't save yourself.
so
Yeah,
it's
like a
just
seizure. It gives you a seizure.
I was gonna send Craig with a little funny in the chat. Elliot's a bad gambler. Yeah, I am a bad gambler, Craig. But anyway, the Big 12 court, the Big 12 court. It's just the B, or it's the Roman numerals
XII.
over and over and over and over and over again.
That's right.
Throughout every space on the court. It's truly one of the most disgusting.
Repulsive.
It's horrible. And the fact that it's just like those new era hats. Whoever thought of that, we just got to have better ideas. I mean, there just has to be better ideas out there. But yeah, good luck to them today. I'm not going to take them to win. I don't know if I've told you guys this. I have a friend and and I'll give him a shout out. His name's Cole. And what we do is every single conference tournament game. That's with every little conference. That's the SWAC. That's the CAA. That's the Horizon. Every little conference tournament game that's played over this 2-week stretch here. We bet it at $1 a piece. So we each pick a team. It's just no spreads. It's just favorite. Who wins the game? You get a point, obviously, if you pick right. You obviously you lose $1, and that's how it is. So there's a couple $100 in play here, but obviously if you get heavy favorites, it's easier to get those points. And we do like a snake draft is how we do it. Last night we did our draft for today's slate of games. Not one of us took the Bearcats as a 7-point favorite. Usually, obviously, the 10-point favorites, 9-point favorites, all those get taken off the board first. The 7-point favorite Bearcats did not get picked until the last round. With the last pick is when we picked it, and I think we picked Oklahoma State. So
Nice.
It's a train wreck, but good luck to them today, and maybe they'll show signs of life like they did last year. Now let me ask you guys this. Would you, after a colossal, disappointing, gross season like the Bearcats just had, 0 players and all the honors, would you accept a bid to go to the Crown after all this? There's no way.
I'm not big on accepting bids after disappointing seasons.
Okay, you're right.
So I got to stay consistent.
You're not big on accepting championships.
Well, you
after
beat your
disappointing.
rival, so you're good.
Yeah, I guess we're good. See, that's where your argument just loses everything. But I think if they accept the Crown this year, it'll just piss me off even more. I'm hoping they don't do that. Obviously, again, they're contractually obligated. If they were to go to a tournament, it would have to be the Crown. No more NIT. I would say no. I would venture to say no. I know it's a little bit different for a school like Wright State. Wright State, it's harder for them to get into the actual tournament, so playing in, the NIT is a cool thing. For the Bearcats right now, it's like...
Well, to be fair, Cincinnati and Wright State, it both was the same odds
same
winning the
amount,
conference
same
tournament.
amount.
Were they?
I think they probably were. I think UC probably definitely had worse odds. But yeah, I wouldn't accept it. I'm not going to play in the NIT anymore. I'm not doing it anymore.
Well, you're playing the Crown, so good for you.
I guess.
Yeah, I saw on our wonderful program in Chatterbox Bearcats. Again, shout out to those guys because I don't know how they do it. That's absolutely brutal.
Misery.
But, yeah, I saw Houdini or any of his other names. He said that the Bearcats are teetering on the brink of irrelevance. And Chuck quickly corrected him and said that they are irrelevant. And I feel like that's probably the worst place to be as a fan base, especially one here in Cincinnati where it's like I feel like most of UC basketball's whole thing is that they're holding on to national relevance.
Yeah.
Logo, brand, all that stuff. If you're not going to win, at least you're relevant. And I just feel like they're losing that week by week, year by year.
Yeah, I mean, once
I don't know if Cincinnati is in a like. I don't think they would turn any of those down. Like I see, and this isn't like a shot at Cincinnati because I like Cincinnati. I want a reason to root for Cincinnati, to be honest with you. I have no ill will towards the Bearcats. Like it's a program that I would like to. I don't have any disdain for them. I just don't put them in like when Kansas, if they turn down an NIT bid or those like that Vegas bid or whatever. I get it. They're Kansas. They have a brand that I think they're above a lot of that stuff. I don't think Cincinnati's above the NIT or any of those others. It's not a spot they want to be in. But I also think that when you are a coach like Wes Miller and a team that underachieved the way that you did, if you could end the season on any kind of positive note, on any kind of winning note, I think that you accept that challenge and you go and you try to close it out that way. There's also the business side of it that we as fans never really care about. A lot of coaches I've talked to, a lot of athletic directors do put pressure on these teams to accept these bids. A lot of non-blue blood programs that turn down these, a lot of it is not because, oh, forget it, we were bad this year, I don't even want to play in that. A lot of times if they turn it down, it's because a bunch of players just jump ship and enter the portal right after. So as long as not a lot of players jump ship the second that the season's over for the Bearcats, I still see them playing in one of those postseason tournaments. I just don't see them being a program that can literally say, hey, we're above the NIT, we're above the whatever the Las Vegas tournament is or whatever. This is the inaugural year for that. But I don't put them in that category. I don't put Xavier in that category. And that's not a shot at those programs. I just think that's the reality of it. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think it's that you think they're better than it. I just think it almost should be a punishment that you don't get to play postseason basketball if you have to question effort in March. Per Scott Springer, friend of the program, at @SpringerSports on X.com. Brett Yormack, obviously commissioner of the Big 12, confirms that the Crown tournament will involve the top two qualifiers that don't make the NCAA tournament from the Big 12. Looks forward to the partnership with Fox and being in Las Vegas.
It's the Big 12, the Big 10, and I believe the Big East. I think it's the top two non-tournament teams from those three conferences get those bids or whatever. So I couldn't remember it. The Crown. Thank you. Yeah, the Crown is what that tournament is. But so you don't want to see them playing there if they?
No, I have no interest. I
would like to go on record say I'd like to see them play one game.
Why?
We'll just bet against them and have them lose. At home, right?
I mean, yeah.
That'd be cool. Cherry on top. NIT home loss, round one.
Well, by the way, Xavier does play Marquette Thursday. That is at 2:30. So Xavier obviously looking good to make the tournament at this point. It would be pretty difficult. I mean, if they missed the tournament, given how they finished this season.
It was just like every conference champion in the tournament wasn't going to be in beforehand.
Yeah, it would be pretty shocking. So,
what's the number of bid stealers to get him out?
I don't know. I think
5.
Paul said 5 on our show.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be more than that.
Wow.
Because I think Xavier should be firmly in. I don't even think they're a first 4 team. I think they should just be.
Oh wow. I think for the most part they're still listed as first 4.
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
They are, and I think if they beat Marquette, I don't know what conference wins do, but if they beat Marquette, I'd imagine Xavier's looking at just a straight bid into the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a win over. I mean, a top 25 team too in Marquette.
Marquette's fallen off the face of the planet, though.
They were top 10. They were top 10 for a good chunk of the beginning of the season, and then kind of gradually have just kind of fallen back and back as the season's gone on. But
I was looking at odds to win the tournament, the whole tournament, the NCAA tournament yesterday, and Marquette's way down there. I think they've got like the same odds as Vanderbilt or maybe a little less odds than Vanderbilt to win the tournament. So that's pretty brutal.
Big SEC line sitting at 12.5.
Really?
Teams to make the tournament.
Yeah, that's about right. Good for them. I'm still taking under 4.5 teams to make it to the second weekend. Under 4.5.
I'll hammer all the SEC fraud lines.
I like that.
I don't think they are, but I think it's more likely that they lose and get called frauds than.
Who do you think's the biggest? Real quick to end the show. Who do you think's the biggest fraud in college basketball? Is it Wisconsin?
No,
It's not Wisconsin?
I think Wisconsin's legit.
You believe you're a believer
I
in
think they're the
Wisconsin?
Big Ten's best chance to win a championship.
Okay. I think Michigan. No, I might change my answer. It's Michigan. Michigan stinks.
Can you count them?
Yeah, they're in. I think they're in the tournament.
Yeah,
so yeah.
but like, can you be a fraud if you're not? I was going at the top here of the odds. I thought you were going to finish that Michigan with Michigan State.
No,
There's no way they can win a championship.
Michigan State
0% chance.
Yeah, I think Michigan is legit a joke. Like that's a top 25 team, and that's a joke.
They won't be ranked anymore, will they?
No, but they were a top 25 team as of 2 days ago.
You're right.
So I think Mouse Cop is saying Gonzaga is the biggest fraud.
But I don't think they're too far down.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're like an 8 seed. Is that what they are?
Out of the
9
top
seed?
6 teams, tell me 2 of them that can't win a championship. Duke, Auburn, Florida, Houston, Alabama, Tennessee. Which 2 of those teams do you know for sure can't win a championship?
I know Tennessee can't win. That's a fact.
Okay. So they would be your biggest fraud?
That's my biggest fraud. Tennessee can't win.
Okay.
Tennessee can't win.
sometimes you just have to.
I don't think
tough
Auburn
nuts.
can win.
You don't think Auburn can win?
will not win this national
Oh
championship.
boy.
And Bruce
Chad
Pearl,
Baker-
you do trust.
Oh boy.
Bruce Pearl's going to sweat too much. Chad Maker-Bizarro is 26-year-old, and he elbows teenagers in the back of the head. So they're going to throw him out, and they're going to lose to Yale in the first round again.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. Yeah, I think Auburn. They fought each other on a plane on the way to Maui. Like they're really good. They hate each other. That's not going to win you a championship.
By the way, Bruce Pearl, is he going to take the Tennessee job next year when their head guy retires?
Tennessee fans think it's Nate Oates. They think he turned down Kentucky for Tennessee. So they'll be real happy when he doesn't come to Tennessee.
When was the last time Barnes got to a Final Four? Has he ever been to a Final Four?
Yeah.
Did he get there with Texas?
Right?
He didn't do it with Tennessee, though. is
No,
what
I
I'm
don't think
asking.
Tennessee is ever.
No, I don't think Tennessee's ever. Okay, good. Just
He's
wanted
a
to make
good
sure.
coach. He has a good, no matter where he's at, they're good every single year. But it's like he just lives in that mid-tier range. He never gets from that Final Four. He doesn't win that championship. I don't know. I've always liked Barnes, though.
Yeah.
But, yeah, a lot of rumors of him retiring potentially at the end of the year. And I'm curious to see just how lucrative that Tennessee job is. They got a very good NIL deal, collective over there for football and basketball. So we'll see. Even baseball. They have a hell of a collective for baseball. They just they kill it with that, too.
I need to know if St. John's has a chance or if I'm
bet
just
on
riding the wave.
I bet on St. John's.
They are so much fun, but I need to know if they actually have a chance.
not great at shooting the basketball.
But no one else can score on them.
That's true.
They
That's
lead
true.
the country in coach aura. In coaching aura, they lead the country, and I think that's
By a
tough.
mile.
Yeah, but I
with
think
my
he lost.
brackets coming up.
I think he lost all the aura when he did that Jimmy Fallon song.
Yeah, that was bad.
Was
really
that
bad.
recent? I don't know. I'll have to go look for it.
Yeah, or don't.
He lost the aura?
Save your opinion of Rick Pitino.
You know, the moral thing. Remember we talked about that earlier? Just win,
That's
baby.
right.
Just-
That's right.
Win me a couple games. Have some fun.
all right. All right, we're done. We'll do it again. Do you guys have box lunch or anything coming up today?
Nada.
Nada.
All right.
Go
Simple enough.
Bearcats.
Have a good day.
Go Bearcats.